Welcome in to Bears Weekly, a Chicago Bears network production. Download the Chicago Bears official app, brought to you by Verizon, to follow the team on the go. Bears Weekly is brought to you by Advocate Healthcare, Athletico Physical Therapy, Bet Rivers, CDW, Connie's Pizza, IGS Energy, and Miller Lite. Here are your hosts, Jeff Joniak, a.k.a. the Mayor of Bearsville, and his sidekick, Tom the Surfmaster Thayer.
We are now a month away from the start of training camp, and still lots to discuss about what promises to be a wild ride in 2024 with Super Bowl winning Bears guard Tom Thayer. I'm Jeff Joniak from SiriusXM NFL Radio's Moving the Chains. We have former Bears quarterback Jim Miller. Thanks to Dan Barilli and Jordan Tredup, our producers, and in the ESPN studios, Kevin Zepak tonight. The executive producer of the Bears Radio Network is Eric Ostrowski. Coming up, our conversation with Adam Rank from NFL Network, always entertaining. Fellas, how's everybody doing? We got lots to discuss and not a lot of time to do so. I'm going to start, Tom, with DeAndre Carter coming aboard this week. Another wide receiver, kick return, punt return candidate. He only played 4 games in 2000 with the Bears. He's been here before. But DeAndre Carter, since 2018, I should say, number 2 in punt return yards, number 4 in kick return yards in the NFL.
It just makes me think that is there either something more wrong with Deontay Pettis that we don't know because he didn't really participate very much in OTAs and minicamp, and number 2, if he is healthy, it's going to increase the competition of that position even more. Both of the returners. And I think with the inclusion of the new kickoff return game, if you feel that you've had a past with a player that you figure their talent is super electric for what the new return game is about, you want to bring every one of those guys aboard that you can.
And, Jim, Chris Batty had him in Charger land in 2022. He was second in the NFL in punt returns at 11.7, so he can vouch for him too.
Yeah, and, I do. I think whether it's Pettis or Velus Jones, I think it's upped it. It's been kind of a slow burn with Velus Jones Jr. I think we know that. He's got to get going. He's got to get more production in terms of what he's doing. So when you bring in a veteran like this, I think it just amps it up a lot more, and what's expected. Because it's going to be hard for him to crack that lineup with Rome Odunze, just drafted for Velus Jones. So it's got to be as a kick returner, in my opinion, because you got DJ Moore, you drafted Rome Odunze, and then you bring in Keenan Allen, 11 personnel, which is 3 wide receivers for the listeners out there. It's the most used personnel grouping in the league. So for me, it puts more pressure on Velus Jones. How are you going to crack the lineup to get in? And it's got to be as a returner, in my opinion. So it's a good, healthy room. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, it definitely is, Tom. We talk about the running back room all the time. We're going to talk more about running backs here, but the depth at receiver, and you've got to factor in Tyler Scott as well. He had chances to return the ball last year as well. I'm looking for him to have a really good training camp and really tackle some of the issues he may have had last season. Yes, the burners on Velus right now, too. I mean, this is year 3 for Velus Jones.
A couple of weeks ago, we were introduced to the term dirty ball by Jim Miller, talking about what the new kickoff could be. Jeff, I don't think there's any athlete that's on the Bears roster that's not capable of being a kick returner. Because if you're not necessarily talking about a 4-second hang time, sun in your eyes, trying to concentrate on the flight of the ball, maybe in a windy outdoor stadium or a confusing indoor stadium. If you're a Herbert, or if you're Roschon Johnson, if you're any of these guys that are great with the ball in their hands, you are a candidate nowadays in this new modern day return game to be a returner. So we're not so much anymore stuck on that prototype returner. We're going to be looking at athletes and what they can do with the ball in their hands. That's why even in Pittsburgh, the conversation of Justin is a part of it. And, you can't ignore it, and I don't think you can ignore anybody on the roster that's an athlete.
Yeah, they almost have to be like an outfielder in baseball. I think it was special teams coordinator Chase Blackburn of the Chargers brought that up, because you're right, with that dirty ball, that you're going to need athletes that can field like a center fielder. A line drive that just comes out, and you got to be able to, and if that ball hits the ground and it's bouncing around, guys that can scoop it up and field a ground ball and those type of things. So they're almost going to be like center fielders, on a baseball team with what they're going to be asked to do. And normally you're a center fielder is a guy who can run and get to those gaps, like in the outfield, to retrieve the ball as quickly as possible. And that ball could be bouncing all kinds of crazy ways.
Because if this new return infiltrates the college game, and you see college returners, if they go to one knee and they catch the ball, they're down. So they're going to have to change that rule if it ever does go into the college game to try to get more guys ready for the pro game. And so in the pro game, if you get down to that knee, like Jim says, an outfielder that's taking in an aggressive ball at you, boom, you're still alive until you're touched.
All right, we usually save Tom's thoughts for segment 5, our last segment. We're going to throw one in here because we didn't get to it last week, Jim. So he wanted to know division MVPs of each team. So I'll speak for Tom. He had Goff for Detroit, Jefferson for Minnesota, Love for the Packers, and then a debate about the Bears. Tom, a 4-pack, Sweat, DJ, Caleb, Jalen Johnson. Jim, take the baton, and then Tom can fill in the blanks.
I would definitely say Goff for the Detroit Lions. I think for the Green Bay Packers, to me, it's going to be Jeff Hafley. He has to come through. Dude, they haven't stopped the run in forever under Joe Barry, who is their former defensive coordinator. Jeff Hafley, they've been literally 28th and 30th the last 3 or 4 years. They don't have the ability or have not shown the ability to stop the run, so I'd say Hafley for them. For the Minnesota Vikings, that's hard. I think that defense, it's going to be Brian Flores, their defense coordinator, because I think that defense is going to have to carry the offense due to Sam Darnold, his issues with throwing the turnovers and things like that. And we may see J.J. McCarthy by the end of the year. So I would say it's Brian Flores there as well. And for the Bears, I agree with Jeff. I mean, I would go with Montez Sweat. He's the leader on defense. And much like what Adam Rank said, they need a pass rusher opposite him to really show up. And I think we know about Javon Dexter. But offensively, I'm going to say it's Caleb Williams. I just think less is more. He shouldn't put pressure on him to do more. Less is more for him in order for him to get his sea legs under him and get sturdy as a quarterback in the NFL.
But, I mean, you heard my other choices within the division. If I had to now narrow it down to one guy with the Bears, I would like to see Montez Sweat. If he came up and he had a 12 or 14 sack season with the contributions of the other guys and the aggressiveness now that the defensive coordinator can have against every one of the opponents, if Montez Sweat has that type of season, you're going to look at some of that resulting in extra possessions for the Bears, offense time on the field, and having a defensive MVP from the defensive end position from any football team. It sparks a lot of opportunities downfield for the interceptions by linebackers and defensive backs.
I'm going to throw my angle in it. I agree, Goff. I'm going to go Jefferson, Minnesota. I love the idea of Hafley for the Packers because that's the big change there. And because of the one ball, we'll discuss this with Chris Batty coming up in segment 3, the wide receivers coach. So one begets the other. If Montez and his group are killing it, the ball's coming out and the ball's getting intercepted. But the what if Jalen Johnson returns a few touchdowns, cleans up some of those dropped interceptions a year ago and shuts down everybody's top weapon in the division, he would definitely be a defensive MVP and MVP of the team because there's a lot of great receivers in the division. All right, we got to take our first break. Adam Rank of NFL Network joins us here on ESPN 1000 of the Bears Radio Network.
This is Bears Weekly with the voice of the Bears for 23 years, Jeff Joniak, on the Bears Radio Network.
This segment of Bears Weekly is brought to you by Athletico Physical Therapy. Visit athletico.com to request an in-clinic or virtual appointment and start feeling better tomorrow. Segment 2 of Bears Weekly here on ESPN 1000 and the Bears Radio Network. Jeff Joniak, Tom Thayer, Jim Miller, and our old pal, Adam Rank, Chicago Bears fan, but crazy NFL expert from NFL Network, the Sick Podcast. Catch him on that. And Mr. Fantasy Football as well. Adam, thanks for getting up there in California with us. We can see you. We're only using the audio for the purposes of the show. But boy, you got quite the setup back there. I see a lot of bobbleheads. You got a Thayer bobblehead, a Miller bobblehead in the background. What do you got?
You know, I'm
Never
still
had
waiting
one.
for it. You know what? I think that I think we should talk to the Bears administration. I think there should be some bobblehead. If there isn't, I have not been sent one, which is a grave mistake. And number two, we should have one. Like, why? Who wouldn't want one? I know the Bears already do a great job of packing the stadium, but that would be a hot ticket.
I'll tell you what a hot ticket would be, Tom and Jim. Tom, there should be the 5 blocks of granite offensive line of the 1980s through the 90s. Of you guys as one big bobblehead. I'm certain a combined bobblehead has never been done. What do you think? Let's get it going.
That would be the only time that we're all the same height. Because when you got Van Horn at 6'7", me and Jay at about the 6'3", 6'4", and Bortzy 6'6", and Jimbo 6'5", it sure would be the first time that we all saw eye to eye.
Let me ask you this, Tom, because I remember whether it's Olin Kreutz or Big Cat Williams, did you like wearing the darks or the whites? Because nobody liked wearing the whites because you looked like Michelin men out there. They always complained about the whites when we had to play away.
Yeah, that's kind of funny because McMichael used to talk about that all the time because he was a big fan of the blue. Because he pulled his white pants up so high, it made his torso look like it was about 18 inches long. So I think all of us that carried a little bit of extra weight were more fan of the blue than the white.
Hey, Adam, that's a great entree into what's going on with the Bears. We'll talk about the current iteration, 2024 about to unfold, but the Hall of Fame coming up. And then a matter of days, really. August 1st is the game, the induction. A couple days later of Devin Hester, Steve McMichael, and we got to give it to Julius Peppers as well. He had a great career, obviously, with the Carolina Panthers and Green Bay Packers as well. As a Bears fan, it's a big day. It's a big day with a triple threat there.
No, it is huge. And I think for a lot of us, we've wanted to see Devin Hester in the Hall of Fame for quite some time. I think for a big reason why is during the era that he played, he was the biggest weapon for this team. And so much so that Tony Dungy fretted about it before the Super Bowl and was determined not to kick in the ball and then decided at the last moment or overnight or whatever it was, like, I'm not going to let somebody do this to me. And then they kicked it to him and he returned it for a touchdown. And then I don't know what happened the rest of the game. But still in that moment, one of the brightest moments for a lot of people. And so it was great to see him in. And it's interesting too, that he's going into the Hall of Fame the same year that the Bears took Torrey Taylor at number 4, or in the 4th round, I should say, because we've been preaching special teams for the last 6 years, trying to get Devin Hester into the Hall of Fame. You're like, yeah, like this is how important it is, like how important special teams players are. So it's great to see Devin Hester in. We've talked about Steve McMichael every time we come on, and I can't talk about it enough about how great he was as a player. That's one of the things about the 85 Bears is the personalities, and it's hard to be, with such a great team and still try to find your way as a part of it. And Steve McMichael was certainly one of those guys, and I think statistically belonged to the Hall of Fame a long time ago, finally getting his due. And I remember, I always joke about this too, because he was one of my dad's favorite players. And then he went into professional wrestling, which I was into, and like, oh my God, McMichael's here. And so for a lot of people who enjoyed wrestling, who might not have been, either alive during the time of the Bears playing in the 80s or just didn't realize, like, no, he was an excellent football player too. So it's good to see him there. And I know that you're being very nice to Julius Peppers. I don't know that I will be, but those two guys, it's great having them.
So I want to ask one question about the Hall of Fame game, because we're talking about Devin Hester, we're talking about Steve McMichael, we're talking about the short-term career that Julius Peppers had with the Chicago Bears. And I don't know if he'll play or no plays, but we don't talk about Caleb Williams at all. And that's his first NFL game, first time he's going to walk onto a field, but we're talking about the inductees, not about the newcomers. So I find that kind of funny that as much as attention as we are giving Devin and Ming and so on and so forth, that we're really not giving a lot of attention to a cast of players, including C.J. Stroud, who came on and had one of the most explosive rookie seasons of any quarterback in the history of the league.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I was thinking about that too, and I'm actually curious to see how Caleb sort of handles it, because everything that he's done since he's been drafted, he's really ingratiated himself to the Chicago community. You see him around town, you see him at ball games, you see him joining in chants with the fans. And so I'm curious how he plays this because he's done such a nice job. I want to see. I'm sure there's going to be something. You know what I like? I'm sure there's going to be some sort of homage, and I'm excited for the Bears to really embrace this. And it's one of the things that I've really enjoyed about the short tenure of Ryan Poles. And not that the Bears have never embraced the past, but there's really been an emphasis on owning the Bears' legacy. And it's always been kind of a shock to me because, this is a team that's won 9 NFL championships. I know the Super Bowl, the last Super Bowl win hasn't been since the 80s, but there is still a great lineage here for this team. So I'm curious to see how it plays. But like you said, you would think that it would be all about Caleb because this is going to be the first, and he's probably not going to play, and he'll be on the sidelines. He'll be, interviewed during the game at some point. But it is about the guys going in, and I think that's a nice tribute to those fellas.
It's interesting, Adam, because this new kickoff rule, I think one of the reasons why it passed is because of great players like Devin Hester. Nobody's done what he's done in the game as a returner. And it's, you look at the Bears, they just signed DeAndre Carter. Teams are investing now back into special teams and just how do you think it's all going to play out? We may not see a lot in the Hall of Fame game. Maybe teams don't want to show what they're going to do in the preseason, but it's going to be interesting how it all plays out.
No, and I think a lot of people too were talking about Velus Jones Jr. How this could be an opportunity for him to really show himself, and they brought in Carter, as you said, because they want a competition there because they know how important it is. And so for me, I thought it was kind of a disservice to get rid of that part of the game. And again, we're spoiled because we're Bears fans and we had Devin Hester for so long. But it's like the kickoffs used to be exciting. Like growing up, that was a real exciting time to watch those kickoffs. And I understand player safety is of the utmost importance, but you really want to go out there and bring back that element of the game, bring the special teams back into it. And so again, with what the Bears have done during this offseason, it shows me that they're really serious about special teams and making this a huge advantage. And so, again, like you, I don't think we're going to see much of it in the Hall of Fame game, and I can't wait to see it play out during the season.
Heck, Justin Fields returning a kickoff at the start of the Madden 25 reveal trailer, apparently, today. How about that? But, yes, wearing his number 2, but it was a double reverse. Again, kicking off the idea literally that there are going to be some very exciting plays in the return game in 2024 and beyond. Hopefully.
I would love to see that. I know that there was a joke made about it, but at some point, and people are, we don't want to risk our backup, but like, remember when Cordell Stewart was playing? Like, that was such a huge advantage. Anton Randall L, was a good college quarterback at Indiana and went on to be a special teams ace. And I think there's a real, there's a way to really embrace what you're good at. If you think back to Tim Tebow a couple of years ago, like he kept giving it a go at quarterback. Not to compare these two, but it's like, at some point he realized like I need to find other ways to get on the field. And he realized it too late. I'm curious to see what the Steelers do. And the special teams aspect of it, that's something that I've thought about. And as a Madden player, I'm interested in it. And I did not check Twitter today, so I haven't seen it yet, so I'm sure.
Oh, it's out there. It's out there, Adam.
I'm sure people let that go without mention.
Yeah.
Knowing the internet as I do.
Adam Rank, our guest here on ESPN 1000 of the Bears Radio Network, here on Bears Weekly. Jeff, Tom, and Jim. You obviously never turn your football mind off, even in this so-called down period. You're always thinking. You got this this Fantasy Lounge series. I caught it on, I think, Instagram. Somebody sent it to me. And you had a picture of Montez Sweat, I believe, in the background. And a little ode to Caleb Williams. So where you at on fantasy for these Chicago Bears?
Well, it'll be interesting because the Bears, for the first time in a long time, I guess you could say, when Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey were there and Forte, it's similar to that, where there's a lot of good players and a lot of good options. And it's curious because we don't know what Caleb Williams is going to do yet. We don't know where he's going to funnel his targets. Now, we knew when Jay Cutler was playing quarterback that all the balls were going to Brandon Marshall. Okay, that was easy. We don't know because there's a lot of varieties and a lot of options. DJ Moore obviously was fantastic last season, a big reason why. Justin Fields was throwing to him because kind of, one of the few guys who was getting open on a consistent basis. But now you bring in Keenan Allen, who's coming off his best season. You use a first-round pick on Rome Odunze. You still got Cole Kmet. and you've got a bevy of running backs to try to figure out which way you are going. So the Bears could end up being one of those teams that's one of the top offensively, but still a little befuddling to fantasy enthusiasts as we're trying to figure out which combination, which player that we're going with, and guys are not getting overdrafted for that thing. The one player that I really like, I think DeAndre Swift has an opportunity to really break out this season. He was fantastic for the Eagles last year, but we all know that when they got near the goal line, it was going to be Jalen Hurts. It was the brotherly shove who scored 15 touchdowns. Like, that has a huge impact on your fantasy running back, and I truly believe that Caleb Williams is not going to be put into that position when they get near the goal line, which should breed opportunities for DeAndre Swift, which I think, I'm not ever the optimist here, that he's going to get a lot of those chances. So I think it's going to be fun. I think it might be one of those things. I anticipate, Jeff, going out there and people complaining about, like, why doesn't DJ Moore get all, like, hey, sorry, they're winning games. I don't care. They're scoring points. I don't care. I think Caleb's actually the guy that you're going to want because he's probably going to show his athleticism, running the football a little bit, not as much as Justin, but still enough to give you a little taste. And they're going to be moving the ball. I really do believe that. So I think that Caleb is a really good option. And of course, I would draft him over any of the rookie quarterbacks like the Bears did. So I think there's some good chances, some good opportunities there.
Hey, Adam, let's stay in the fantasy world and you look at this division, because I don't think in my lifetime I've ever seen the entire division have the receivers that they have, whether it's a receiver, tight end, or double receiver combination. Where do you think these receivers rank in terms of just in the division? When you look at Amon St. Brown and their tight end, you look at the two receivers in Minnesota, you look at what Green Bay has to offer, and as you mentioned, all the weapons here in Chicago. In the fantasy world, where do the receivers rank in this division?
Well, I think Jordan Love ruled out the Packers receivers by saying none of them were a number one. So I'm like, those are Jordan Love's words, not mine. So I'm sorry, Christian Watson and Dontavian Wicks. Jordan Love himself said none of you are number one wide receivers. I'm gonna let that stand. As far as a duo goes, nobody beats the Minnesota Vikings because Justin Jefferson. We'll see how he rebounds from his injury, and his quarterback, Kirk Cousins, was pretty good. Like that.
Right.
I know that we made our jokes about Kirk Cousins, but that's a really good quarterback. One of the best, actually, the best downfield thrower since 2021. I think statistically speaking, one of the best downfield thrower, which benefited guys like Justin Jefferson, and Jordan Addison's really good. So those two guys are good. Amon-Ra St. Brown might be the best singularly, might be the best number one guy. Listen, Justin Jefferson's coming off that injury. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown's in that conversation. I was talking about this a couple of weeks ago about my top 5 receivers in the league. And I was like, Justin Jefferson, it was Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, those three, pretty unanimous. And then it's like, who are 4 and 5? And there's all sorts of combinations. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown and DJ Moore belong in that conversation. So, but I look at the Bears, I think because they're so deep as a trio. Again, Keenan Allen is a wonderful wide receiver and somebody who lives out here in Southern California. Go to a lot of Charger games because it's right next to the NFL Network studios. If he's not the best route runner in the NFL, I would like to know who is. I would really like to know who is. And I think the best part of his game this season will be anytime the Bears are facing like a 3rd and 8, and you're like, okay, who's covering who? Like Keenan Allen will be wide open 9 yards down the field for his first down. So you've got those two guys. And then you've got Roma Odunze, who to a lot of people, he was the number one prospect on some boards at wide receiver. I know Marvin Harrison got all the pub and everything like that, but there's a real big buzz for Roma Odunze. So I think that trio, unbiasedly, puts the Bears as the top trio in football, real football, fantasy football, all that.
Yeah, that's what's going to be fascinating to watch for me, Adam, is because when you look at the Bears, they were the number one rushing team last year, and what they've done to insulate Caleb Williams. I think if we're all being honest, we'd rank the quarterbacks in the division, Jared Goff, probably then Jordan Love, and it's going to be interesting how Caleb Williams, and we'll see what happens with Sam Darnold, but he could be replaced by J.J. McCarthy, and how that plays out, because I think the Bears have insulated Caleb where he could have a fantastic rookie year with what is around him, because you mentioned the 3 wide receivers, Odunze added. Cole Kmet, the running game, the specialty players around Caleb Williams as a whole, I think are pretty darn good.
And Gerald Everett is actually a pretty good receiving tight end as well. It kind of goes under the radar, but he's pretty good. And then we're hopeful, our guy Tyler Scott is going to step up. I was talking to Tyler on draft night, and I said, this is, I know it's disappointing, but it's like a real good opportunity because you need depth at wide receiver. And that's one of the things that I really, really appreciate what Ryan Poles did is because, listen, you know as well as I do, like years ago, they would have traded for Keenan Allen and been like, okay, we're good. We're good at wide receiver. Never addressed it again until something happened. But now by adding Rome Odunze and having Tyler Scott, who I think at times last year really showed some stuff. He's got some things to work on, but this is a perfect learning opportunity for him. And if he goes out there and he kind of studies under these guys and just takes advantage of his opportunities, we're going to be looking at 4 wide at times, and it's going to be really special.
Final moments with Adam Rank from NFL Network. So you pick every team's record. I don't know how long that took, but you did it. You had the beloved at 12-5, the Lions at 10-7, and swept by the Bears. Yeah. I love that.
Well, listen, we led them. Listen to me. I still do this. I'm sorry. I'm embarrassed because with Tom and Jeff, I always feel embarrassed when I do this in front of former greats. We were beating the Lions for 116 minutes last season, okay? And then everything fell apart. And that's, again, like everybody's like, well, you thought they'd be 12-5 last year. I go, honestly, like they had those 3 games where they had over a 90% chance of winning in the fourth quarter that they did not finish. It should have been 10-7. Should have been 10-7 to the point like week 18 wouldn't have mattered. They would have probably sat Justin Fields. They would have started Tyson Bagent. Nobody would have cared. And they would have went to the playoffs, probably lost, but whatever. The thing is like the team is much better than everybody wants to give them credit for. And it's something that the Lions went through last season where people are like, okay, you were fine last year, but are you really good? And then the Lions went out there and proved themselves. And I think the Bears are in a very similar situation with a team that's top to bottom very good. The one leap of faith that I was taking with that is that they're going to address the extra edge rusher position, which I truly believe it's going to happen. Whether it's Yannick Ngakoue or whoever it is, there's going to be somebody's going to be brought in. There's either going to be a trade, a free agent signing, something's going to happen. And this defensive line is going to be even better by the time that we get to training camp or maybe through training camp. So I think I feel comfortable with that. I think that the Bears and the Lions are the 2 teams that are, I think they're above everybody. The Packers are good. Like I didn't say that they were not bad. I didn't say they were bad.
9-8.
Okay.
9-8,
they were good. They were good. I'm curious. I know that they were able to vilify Joe Barry and like, now we'll have it. I'm like, there's still something about your organization. That's fine. You're good, but are you good? Like it's been a thing. I don't know. I don't want to use this time bashing the Packers. And then the Vikings, I think, just have a lot of question marks. We love Kevin O'Connell. I actually really like Sam Darnold. I'm interested to see what he does. I feel last year Brock Purdy, when he was injured, got healthy real quick because I think there was some like, don't blow up my spot here. Because if Sam Darnold came in and played well, then I think that things could have been different. But it'll be interesting. But I got a lot of confidence in the Bears, as I always do. And I think it's justified. I think the season sets up perfectly for them to gain some momentum. I think having a first game against the Titans, against a first-year head coach, a quarterback who in his second year who didn't play a lot as a rookie, you couldn't ask for a better opponent at home. The noon game at home, let's keep us out of prime time, keep us out of Green Bay that first week. We're fine. And then I think there's a real chance to put some momentum together early in that schedule before we get to the back end of it, where you play all the division opponents.
Hey, Adam, real quick, Hard Knocks. Are you a fan? What do you want to see? And is there anything you'd like to see them cover?
I want to see it. I do. And I think too, like, I know people think about distractions and everything. These kids grow up with phones in their faces since the time they were born. For us old guys, that's a distraction. For these young bucks, they know what they're doing. They're savvy, especially Caleb. So I'm interested to see it. My breakout star is going to be Tevin Jenkins.
Oh, wow. Okay, very good. That's a good topic as we pick up the conversation as we leave you bees to your summer vacation. Adam Rank, appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me. Always an honor and a privilege to be on with you.
And coming up next, our conversation with Bears wide receiver coach Chris Batty. This is ESPN 1000 on the Bears Radio Network.
This is Bears Weekly with the voice of the Bears for 23 years, Jeff Joniak, on the Bears Radio Network.
This segment of Bears Weekly is sponsored by IGS Energy. Jeff, Tom, and Jim here on Bears Weekly. At the end of the offseason program, the wide receiver coach, Chris Batty, among the other offensive assistants available to the media, had a chance to visit with him about his arrival in Chicago and what he has to work with in that room. And I started the conversation, fellas, with a simple question about do the young guys ask questions?
But they don't ask them quite as much when the vets are around. So those guys, you can answer questions that they're a little bit embarrassed to ask when the older guys are there.
That's interesting. I never considered that, honestly. That whole classroom thing would get a little interesting.
No, it does. And Rome is really, really smart. I mean, he's a really smart guy. So at the end of the day, he's got a lot of really good questions.
All right, so you've obviously had a great success where you've been and with Keenan and other receivers, DJ, but to have them all together now in this new group as well, how exciting are you as a coach?
Extremely. I mean, DJ I've known for the last 10 years or so, and then having Keenan the last 3, I know how good those guys are, and they know how I coach. So it's kind of a good, melding of each other. And then, the rest of the room is trying to catch up to those guys. We all aspire to be in the position that DJ and Keenan are in. So those guys are hungry and trying to learn and trying to get in a position to be successful themselves. So it's really exciting time for all of us, I think.
And how would you describe the way you coach?
Yeah, I would say, I always say I'm fair but firm. I rarely raise my voice. That's really not my style. But at the same time, I want to make sure we get things done a certain way. The great thing for me is DJ knows how I coach. Keenan knows how I coach. So those guys, can give those other guys a heads up.
Spread the word.
Yeah. Hey, this is how Coach deals with this, and this is kind of my attitude towards things. So these are the things that I like. So those guys, it makes it easier when you have people in the room that know your personality. So that's always a bonus. Not to mention those guys are really good.
Yeah,
so.
really. Are they fun in there too? I mean, their personalities. I mean, things that pop up in an intimate setting of a meeting room like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to say the least. You got different personalities, and then you got different areas as far as where they are in their career, stages in their career. So there's people that feel good and open to be themselves, and then some people that aren't quite there yet. So they're like just wanting to keep to themselves, stay their lane until they establish themselves. So, but I really like our room. I like the guys in it. They're working really hard. And at the end of the day, we're all learning because this is the third different system for me in 3 years. So you're trying to make sure that you get all the intricacies of it down so you can teach it to them, and be in the right language, be in the right frame of mind of everything, trying to get done the right way.
Yeah, you don't have the luxury, right, to have, I often hear about new systems, new playbooks, and granted, it's similar to what these guys did last year, but you got to know it cold now.
Yeah.
So has that been a challenge for you with 3 different?
No, it always is.
Yeah.
And the challenge is not necessarily the plays. A lot
The
of
language.
it is similar. It's the language.
Yeah.
It's being able to speak the exact way that Shane wants us. Because sometimes you catch yourself calling something that you used to, particularly with Keenan being here. So like Keenan will look at me and I'll say, it's old this or it's old that, as opposed to, hey, it's this, because I know he'll understand what it is. But I want to make sure that I get all the verbiage down that Shane wants and say it in the same language, because that's important. It's important, one, to set the tone that, hey, we're all in this together as a coaching staff. And it's important to be able to communicate. So if it's not me saying it, they're understanding what Shane is saying, or they're understanding what Kerry is saying, or Thomas is saying. So we're all talking the same language.
And will you keep looking at it, make sure that the language is going to come out right day one?
Yeah, there's no question. My son's already waiting for me to bring the iPad back so he can read the calls to me.
There's one ball, a lot of weapons. How does everybody stay content within? And I would say it requires a great deal of unselfishness, because there are a lot of great players on this offense. There's one football.
Yeah, but
how do you address it?
Yeah, winning. At the end of the day, it's winning. Like when I got here, one of the first conversations we had in our room was like, DJ, how many playoffs have you been to? DJ was like, none. You know, Keenan, how many have you been to? In 12 years, he's been to 3. You know, we went to 1 together. And so you sit back, it's hard to make it to the dance, you know, and if you don't make it to the dance, you can't make it to the Super Bowl. So at the end of the day, you know, whatever you have to do to sacrifice to get there is going to be worth it when you win. So, of course, you want the numbers, you know, in that process, but at the end of the day, you know, we all got to work together. Like, is it easier with Keenan and DJ and Gerald and Cole and DeAndre Swift and all those guys? Sure.
Yeah.
Right? Will your numbers be the same as they were when it was you and somebody else? Maybe not. But that sacrifice is worth it if we all win. You know, everybody always just takes it for granted.
Yeah.
And you can't. Like, it's, you know, I go home and you talk to your college buddies or whatever, and they go to bowl games every year. You're like, 6-6 ain't getting us to a playoff game in this league. So at the end of the day, it's a lot harder than it is, you know, perceived.
I lied. One more question, because DJ, I've always been impressed with when he makes even a sideline catch, that his suddenness to create separation is really, in my opinion, makes him the special player there. And Keenan does that with his movements and the way he gets in a position to run away with the ball. Are these things just instinctive for these two particular talents, in addition to being taught the proper way over the course of their lives? What's the key ingredient there?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of both. You know, I think you want to teach them how to attack the ball, how to make sure they create space, to give them a chance. That's one of the things Keenan and I have been working on for the last 2 years, is trying to be better after the catch. And that starts with creating space on the routes. You know, and that starts with us calling plays to give them a chance to create space. So all those things kind of go together. But then a lot of that stuff is natural too, you know. We all want to take credit for things that God sometimes blessed people with, or their hard work blessed them with too. So, you know, I think it's a little bit of both. You know, DJ's been unbelievable with the ball in his hands for a lot longer than I've known him. And, you know, those things haven't changed, you know, since he was at Maryland or at Emotep in Philly. You know, those things, more people see them.
Yeah. Did you project Rome to have that kind of impact as well after the catch?
I hope so.
Yeah.
You know, he did it in college, and I think he's shown right now he's got the ability to do it, and he's got a great frame to be able to make, you know, he could play a lot of different ways because he's rugged and he's quick, you know, and he's got speed, so he's got a lot of things to be able to create space and have run after the catch. So definitely looking forward to working with him, you know, and building up that to where we got a lot of run after catch capabilities.
All right, so Chris Batty, a real interesting perspective because he knows DJ Moore so well. Tommy, he knows Keenan Allen so well from his few years in L.A. with the Chargers. What was your takeaway in that conversation?
Well, I'm glad he encourages the guys who ask questions, because I think going into an experienced veteran room, the most difficult thing is for a rookie to either show he needs a better understanding of what they're talking about or the courage to ask a question in front of veterans. So I like to hear that. But I like to hear the experience coming out of Baty's mouth, understanding that he could take something from every single one of his coaching stops, talking about bringing his iPad home and he and his son going over the information, because it's equally as important for him to learn the new information as it is any one of his players. So, you know, it is still, we look at this 4 weeks left in before they get underway at training camp. This time is probably, or is as important to the new coaches on the staff that as it is to any new player trying to make this team.
Yeah, it's interesting to me how he just talked about the entire room. You know, when we talk about the wide receiver room, because there's a big spectrum there. You know, you've got these two established veterans that command a lot of respect in DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, and then you've got this youngster in Rome Odunze and Velus Jones and Tyler Scott and all the young guys that we've talked about that are probably pretty shy. When you go in that room and you got those two veteran guys that have done it all on every level, and they're probably a little bit, you know, shy about, you know, chirping up a little bit. They're going to kind of keep them in check and say, hey, this is what you need to know. And I think Coach touched on that how those guys, when it's an exciting room, but how those guys really understand, the young guys, I should say, understand that just watch what these guys do. I guarantee you, Coach Batty, he doesn't have to say a lot in that room. because those veterans are leading the way, and he knows they'll bring those young guys along.
Coming up, what are the biggest stories in the NFC North in 2024 with Tom and Jim? I'm Jeff Joniak on Bears Weekly on ESPN 1000 of the Bears Radio Network.
This is Bears Weekly with the voice of the Bears for 23 years, Jeff Joniak, on the Bears Radio Network.
This segment of Bears Weekly is brought to you by CDW. People to get it. Jeff, Tom, and Jim on Bears Weekly. Fellas, I want to talk about the biggest stories in the division. I'm going to start with the Bears. I'm going to throw a wrinkle in here. I know everybody, and it is about the quarterbacks. But I'm going to go back to our discussion last week because Bears.com, Gabby Hayduk, did an article on Javon Dexter, and he's put out there some goals. He's got it on his phone. 8 sacks, 15 tackles for loss, Pro Bowl, All-Pro. He's thinking big. Tom, how important is that just to have that out there in his mind? Cleaned up his body, nutrition, diet, lost 10 pounds of fat, added 5 pounds of muscle, and still a young man on a growing frame.
What Ditka used to say, what your mind believes your body can achieve. And that's what kind of the way that you have to think about that in numbers as a defensive lineman. As an offensive lineman my whole life, my goal was to limit the penalties and start every game because you didn't have a lot of things that you could really attribute to numbers. And if Javon Dexter is able to climb to those numbers in year 2, expect even better numbers in year 3 and so on and so forth. Javon Dexter is proved throughout his rookie year that he never really hit a rookie wall, and he was improving fundamentally and technically throughout the entire season. So now he's had this time off during the offseason to kind of get away from things, unlike a year before. Now if he comes in there and he complements Montez Sweat and Andrew Billings and DeMarcus Walker and the rest of those guys in the defensive line, that means the defensive line is going to take a significant step forward if you're talking about 8 sacks in double-digit and tackles for loss, and I would love to see him be able to do that.
Yeah, I think it's good to have overall goals. Like as a quarterback, yeah, obviously you want to limit your turnovers, but I never put numbers on any of that stuff because at the end of the day, you got to work hard, keep your mouth shut, and good things will happen. The numbers will be there if you're out there working, doing what your job is, what your responsibility is, and strive to get better every single game, every single snap, every single practice, all those things. And at the end of the day, your numbers will be where you want them to be.
Yeah, the biggest thing for him, I think, and naturally because of his length, and I'd like to study some of those other long defensive tackles and those playing 3 technique is just that pad level, right, Tommy? Keeping it down as best as possible on every snap. Because what do you always say? Fatigue impacts that over the course of a game.
Well, the thing about Javon Dexter, unlike a lot of the other guys, Montez Sweat, he's a much bigger guy after meeting him on the night of the draft than what you see on TV. Javon Dexter is always going to have to be coached to have that great bendability, just like every tall defensive lineman. Because once you start losing the game of leverage against these strong offensive linemen, you're going to lose the battle on the line of scrimmage. So it's just something that guys that are uniquely are just tall and have that length. Even a guy like Hampton, he understood how to use his length as a weapon. And if Javon Dexter can learn how to use his length as a weapon, he's going to be even more difficult to block.
Hey, Jim, we had Gary Fensick on our podcast that will drop next Wednesday, Bears Etc., on all the Bears platforms or wherever you get your podcasts. And he mentioned the loss to the 49ers by the Bears that preceded their Super Bowl winning year in '85. And I'm looking at the Lions because sometimes teams don't recover from that. But do you believe the type of coach and the way the Lions are built that will not even be in their mindset? They're thinking really big right now, like the Bears did in '85.
Yeah, I don't think it's slowing them down. I mean, Dan Campbell is, he's going to put the pedal to the metal, and push those players even harder. And I think the type of players they've drafted are mentally tough players. Jared Goff has been through the fire when they traded for him. Brad Holmes, the general manager, knew that. He knew what he was getting in Jared Goff when he traded for him because he had drafted him out there or seen him work and seen him take a team to a Super Bowl. So I think Detroit is a mentally tough team. where I do not think that, what happened last year and how they lost that game to San Francisco is even going to come to the equation. They're not even thinking about that.
Tom, Jordan Love, is there any chance he could have a sophomore slump? And I say sophomore, I know he's been in the league a while, but as a starter, could that rear its ugly head?
I don't think so. I think it's more up to the health of Watson, who hasn't really been an on-field guy much, even though he's got considered world-class type of speed, and there's a lot of changes on his offensive line. If he's running away from pressure more than he is being protected, he could have that a little bit of slump. But I think what he learned of the game and his time on the bench, I think it allows him to carry on what he's been able to do throughout his rookie year.
All right.
Or throughout his first year as a starter.
Yeah, and then lastly, the Vikings. Again, back to the quarterback. Does Sam Darnold have something that he hasn't shown yet in your mind, Jim? Because I think you keep alluding to, by the end of the year, J.J. McCarthy will probably be the starter. But could he surprise?
Yeah, I think,
a Geno Smith-type comeback, Yeah,
Adam Gase coached him in New York, obviously for the New York Jets. Sam Darnold has all the ability in the world. All right, he's got a great arm. He's athletic. But his issue is he never understands when a play is over. Okay, at USC, he had over 30 turnovers, and that's been kind of his history in the National Football League. He'll go out there and try and do too much, which can lead to a bad play and an end to a bad series that ends up in a turnover. He's talented. I think if Kevin O'Connell's going to have to be very careful in how he calls plays in order to corral that, but his history is that's always come out. And so for Minnesota, I think at some point, if those turnovers start happening, they're going to make a change. And they did that last year after Kirk Cousins got hurt, whether Allen was in there and all those players, Joshua Dobbs, and they were rolling through all those quarterbacks. He always pulled them as soon as they started having turnover issues. That's why they went through 4 quarterbacks after Kirk got hurt.
Next up, we talk running backs, a deep Tom Thoughts discussion. It's coming up next here on Bears Weekly on ESPN 1000 of the Bears Radio Network.
This is Bears Weekly with the voice of the Bears for 23 years, Jeff Joniak, on the Bears Radio Network.
3, 2, 1. Calling all Bears fans. Want unforgettable access to see the Chicago Bears play at Soldier Field this season? VIP official ticket packages now available for every home game. Unlock access to exclusive ticket packages that may include entry to in-stadium hospitality lounges, pregame sideline credentials, and the Chicago City Pass. Visit ChicagoBearsVIP.com or call 866-202-5755 for more info. Again, that's ChicagoBearsVIP.com or call 866-202-5755. Don't miss this exclusive opportunity with Chicago Bears VIP. Final segment with Tom Thayer, Jim Miller. I'm Jeff Joniak. The running back discussion. Tom jogged my thoughts and memories, so I followed up with some research. Buddy, we talked about the back of the decades in the division and who that might be here in 2024 as the Bears get ready to go. And Tom, since you brought it up, what sparked this thought in your mind? Because we talk about only, it seems, 11 personnel. What team has a tight end that can threaten the seam and the quarterback that's going to give him the ball?
No, I was just thinking about some of the great backs within our division through all of our lifetimes. Jim and yourself and myself, we're at an age that we remember these decades well. And when you go from Walter Payton, you go to Barry Sanders, you go to Adrian Peterson, and then I'm glad you brought up Matt Forte, because then I immediately went to Aaron Jones. And I was thinking throughout the course of our lifetime, the great backs, Hall of Famers, guys that are on the list of all-time greats in the history of the league. Where is the running back position of this division going? Are we going to have those runners that we become accustomed to in this division, or are we going to have to look at multiple personnel backfields and multiple dimensional athletes at the running back position? And so that's where we're at in 2024, and where are we going with that position?
Yeah, it's interesting. You very rarely see the bell cows anymore. I think right now in the NFL, we probably say Derrick Henry's one of the last big bell cows that Baltimore just picked up, that you could probably give him the ball 30 times just running it, and he can grind it out and finish a game. it's more of a specialty game now where guys are put in situationally. We see running backs split out as wide receivers now. See them coming out of the backfield in motion, and they're more of, say, like Jahmyr Gibbs of the Detroit Lions. They use him more as a receiver at the end of the day. So it's just more of a specialty position, I think, in the bell cow backs, the Campbells of the world and the Walter Paytons of the world and Herschel Walkers of the world, and these guys that could just do it down in and down out and just carry the load. That's kind of gone away by the dodo bird.
Yep. So who's the best in the division? What back's the best in the division? Start with Jim.
I'd say it's Aaron Jones. And I'm telling you, you watch this Jahmyr Gibbs and what he does his second year for Detroit. That is a specialty player who is very special.
I like Gibbs, but I like DeAndre Swift, and I like what he can do when you look at the weapons that he has already downfield. I think if you can get an offensive line that keeps their pieces in place for a majority of the 17 games, a guy like DeAndre Swift could come into this division and light it up because you have 4 playmakers downfield when you're talking about the 3 receivers and Cole Kmet.
So here's something interesting. This is only rushing yards, so it's not a fair representation of what you consider the best overall back during. And this is league wide. I just went back. So the 70s, the top back in terms of yardage was O.J. Simpson in terms of production. Walter Payton was 4th on that list. 80s, it was Dickerson number 1, Eric Dickerson, and Walter was number 2. So Walter bridging 2 decades, yeah, right? 90s, Emmitt Smith, far and away. In the 2000s, LaDainian Tomlinson. Thomas Jones was number 8 on that list, playing for a couple of different teams. In the 2010s, this one shocked me. LaShawn McCoy. Shady McCoy.
Yeah.
2020s, Derrick Henry, that comes to mind. But Josh Jacobs, number 3 on that list, with Dalvin Cook at 4, David Montgomery 6, and Aaron Jones at number 7. I just find it good conversation, funny and interesting.
Well, it is, because you just bring off names at the top of your head, and then you start doing some real investigative work like that, and then you're reintroduced to some names that maybe you weren't thinking about because we didn't see them twice a year or they weren't on our teams as kids. So it's interesting to bring up those types of numbers.
Personally, Jim, I want an all-around back that the defense has to account for. And if he's going to be a 3-down back, I don't know if he's catching it out of the backfield. I don't know if they're just going to run it. But you're right. I do believe multiple backs will be used in all 4 cases in the division, for sure.
Yeah, I do think it's become a substitution game. And it's become a down-specific game where you're going to use specific traits of players and what you're going to showcase and what you're trying to accomplish to get the matchups that you want. And so there's just, that's why it's kind of been devalued over the past couple of years. You look at Christian McCaffrey, he just got the big bump in pay out there for San Francisco because that guy is literally, he's probably about 80 to 90% of their offense is going through him with all the other players that they have there. But he sets a lot of it up, and he's a special back.
But at the same time, Tom, if your defense isn't stopping the run, you're in big trouble. So it's got to haunt you on that side of the ball with all these different types of backs.
I mean, we could have a complete show about running back choices in like a fantasy world. Okay, you got Christian McCaffrey on the board and you have Eric Dickerson on the board. Where are you going to go? Are you going to go with the guy that's 6'2 plus that has the frame of Eric Dickerson and what he's accomplished? Or are you going to go with an undersized guy like Christian McCaffrey, where if you put Eric Dickerson on a team like the modern-day 49ers, would 80 or 90% of the offense still go through his traits? I just think it would be a really fun discussion, about, then and now.
Yeah, Walter Payton would fit in any era.
Correct.
Not even a discussion. Fellas, we're out of time. Thank you once again. We'll talk to you next week. For Tom Thayer, Jim Miller, and thanks to our special guest from NFL Network, Adam Rank, and thanks to our producer, Kevin Zepak. Coming up next, Black and Abdallah. Thanks for listening, everybody. This has been Bears Weekly on ESPN 1000 of the Bears Radio Network.
Thank you for listening to the Chicago Bears Network presentation of Bears Weekly, hosted by the mayor of Bearsville, Jeff Joniak, and Surfmaster Tom Thayer. Podcasts are available on the Chicago Bears official app. Bears Weekly has been brought to you by Apple Podcasts, Bet Rivers, IGS Energy, and Miller Lite.